All right, welcome back to AFSOC Unfiltered. I'm Lieutenant General Jim Slife. Once again, I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Lieutenant Colonel Myron Chivas. Myron, the last time we got together, we talked about a vignette that we heard at a panel that you and I both participated in recently, where one of our squadron commanders was called the N-word out in the local community, and you corrected me on that and said he wasn't called the N-word, right?
Right. I said he was called a nigger.
Yeah. So, you know, that's a awful sensitive word, and it's a sensitive topic in American society, and I think there's a lot of discomfort around that word, both in terms of what it means and where it comes from, but also there's discomfort in the sense of, who can even say that word, right? So clearly, if I were to use that word in a pejorative sense, and use it to put you down or to, call you a name or whatever, I mean, that's totally out of bounds. But if you and I are having a conversation and I'm relaying to you this story that I heard from, one of our squadron commanders, I mean, am I allowed to even say the word, or is it forbidden, to even come out of my mouth? I think it's certainly a question that I'm uncomfortable with, because I don't want to offend, but at the same time it feels a little disingenuous for me to say the N-word. We all know what the N-word is, and so it feels like it's almost a fig leaf that it isn't really doing what it's supposed to do. How, as a representative of all black people, perhaps you could illuminate for me kind of how this word feels to you, and why you felt the need to kind of tell me, no, they didn't call him the N-word. Here's the word they actually called him.
So we're having a conversation, and at the moment that you described a scenario that I'm very familiar with, because it is a very good friend of mine, it's emotional for me. And it felt like, it didn't feel as strong as what it was when you said the N-word, and I knew exactly what you meant, and I knew exactly what that word was. But I wanted to make it as heavy and as emotional as possible by throwing that word out. We hear different variations of the N-word with ER and A on the end, and music. We hear different cultures using it when they talk to each other. And I have had, Caucasian friends where I'm sitting next to them and we're in the car, and we're singing a song, and then all of a sudden the word's coming up and I wait and listen, and I wait for the pause to see what they're gonna say, and they have the weird pause, and then they just get back into the lyrics of the song. And so to me, it's just become a social norm. It's taboo to say it, And Jim, I was thinking about it, and was it as awkward for you to hear your name as it was for me to say it?
It was.
It's institutional, right? So you're Lieutenant General Slife. You'll always be Lieutenant General Slife. And for some reason, for me to say your first name, it felt awkward. It felt weird. It felt uncomfortable, because it was uncomfortable for me to say it. Even though you refer to yourself as it, and I hear generals call you that, and I hear your wife calls you that, it's uncomfortable for me to approach you in any way other than, what's culturally acceptable or institutionally acceptable. And something that I believe is small, as in your first name, I just couldn't do. I just can't do. That's the J word to me. And I'm not saying it's on the same level as the N word, but it's one of those things that, while people could, there's no reason to.
So if you were relaying, well, I heard so-and-so say, well, Jim, what do you think? I mean, you wouldn't say the J word, they used your name. But I mean, you would probably say the name if you were quoting somebody, I would think.
I would replace the J word with Lieutenant General's life, right? So if General Brown and you were having a conversation, I was relaying it, unconsciously or consciously make that change, and when I used to work on the Pentagon, we'd go so far as to use the first initial and the number of stars on their shoulders, right? Before we'd actually type a first name or a last name without, a rank associated with it. It's just so taboo for a junior officer to call a senior officer by their first name. And not to change the topic, I just think we can get to the sense of the word, we can get to the sense of the conversation without having to use that taboo word. And there's a lot of studies on different places or whatnot, and books written on this. But for me, I prefer the N-word, especially when I don't know someone. Because if it just rolls off the tongue just a little too casually, you're like, whoa. No. What I'll feel was the reaction when we said, when I used your first name, which was hard to do, by the way. Whoa, and I may get stuck in the moment. Now, is this something that you always say, or you just throw out there casually, and we can come off topic? So my preference is N-word.
So what do you expect your friends to do when they're singing the song with you in the car? And, I mean, do you expect them to just, bleep that part out?
It depends on my friend. That's just, it just depends on the friend. Good friends from high school, my white friends from high school, I'm still expecting them to bleep it out. Best friend. I love his kids, watched them born. We were raised together. I'm still expecting him to bleep it out. Because I don't want him to let me down. Yeah. And then whenever I'm
it's not so much the right to say the word as it is the respect not to say the word.
It is taboo, and the respect out of the pain and suffering people have gone through for so long. We can go back to the question of, was it about race when something bad happened, playing the race card. People aren't as overt as they used to be. And so when there are these scenarios where race could have, or it's very similar to how something played out with one of my black friends, and we start thinking, well, maybe race was involved. No one wants to be like, well, I did hear him say the N-word once, so this is all starting to make sense. So yeah, just out of the pain, the history of it, I wish it wasn't even a thing. I wish there's so many other words like to describe someone, and even if you're relaying or having a conversation about something that we saw again, the N-word is a positive substitute that has a similar impact. Why? Because I've been asked this question before. Why do white people want to use that word? Like, why can't we leave it at N-word?
Yeah. Well, I don't speak on behalf of all white people, but I don't know that it is. Back to my point, I don't know that it's a desire to use the word. It is a desire to understand the bounds of social behavior and why one set of boundaries apparently applies to me, but maybe it doesn't apply to you, or maybe it doesn't apply to that hip hop artist that is making it an everyday, part of their artistry. Is it okay if it's in an artistic context? Is it okay if it has an A at the end but not an ER? It's not a desire to do it, it's a desire to understand the boundaries. And you know, in the first episode, one of the things that we talked about was why people are uncomfortable having these conversations. And you know, there may be a discomfort because it's been a taboo topic. Race is a taboo topic in the workplace. I mean, that's kind of the way, certainly the way I've kind of grown up in the Air Force. I mean, you know, it's not something that you talk about in a professional workplace. And so some of it is probably due to that. But there's also a discomfort because I don't know where the boundaries are, right? I mean, I don't even know, you know, I'm afraid I'm gonna ask you a question or I'm gonna wanna start a conversation with you and I'm gonna step over some line that I didn't know exist. And so I think a lot of times it's not that somebody wants to use the word, they want to understand where the boundaries are and what the rule sets are that apply. Okay, there's a rule that applies to you and there's a different rule that applies to me, or is it the same rule and I'm just not looking at it right? Or, you know, I mean, it's the, you know, why do you want to know in your U-28? Why do you want to know what the, you know, bank angle limit in your operator's manual is? It's not so you can go around and fly along at that bank angle all the time. You want to understand where the limits are. And so I think it's more an understanding of social boundaries that people, at least for me, you know, that's what, you know, I found myself talking to a bunch of commanders last week, and this story that we're talking about was so powerful for me that I related it to this room full of squadron commanders and first sergeants, and I said the N-word, you know, just the way the story was told to us. And it's, you know, and that's powerful and it's heavy and it's, you know, I mean, you could have heard a pin drop and that stuff. But after the fact, the feedback I got was that, you know, General Slife shouldn't have said that. You know, he should have said the N-word and not say the word. And so, you know, I don't understand. And I'm just trying to be the best version of myself I can. And, you know, I'm trying to be the most effective AFSOC commander I can be. But sometimes I don't know how. And so I think that's kind of where some of that's coming from.
And I found usually the people that tell you something like that or give you that feedback, someone that cares about you. And what's scary is when people talk about it but don't give that feedback. And I think that's why these uncomfortable conversations and having them is important. So someone can approach you and be like, hey, that made me feel some kind of way, and here's why. So it's awesome to hear you have so many people out there that care about you. And that's really why the conversation's important, because when we can get to topics that may be uncomfortable, it feels like you're getting to know somebody. You feel like someone's actually trying to get to know you. And then you can get all that stuff behind you and just start moving forward. So I think, you know, you learned something different, a different perspective after you told the story and the feedback you received. And again, it depends on who it is, you know. If I heard you say that story, I'd be like, sir, I care about you so much, I don't want a bad piece of, you know, social media to get out there. So it's interpreted incorrectly, or, you know, the distraction that could come of it because it's you that said it, or the fact that maybe people didn't hear anything after that word because everyone was just hit so hard by that they didn't get the rest of the story. So I think the N-word carries the mail.
That's really useful. Thanks for illuminating that. So this kind of gets around to another point that I think our listeners may be curious about is, so, the theme here is listen, learn, and lead. We have to, listen to the people that we work with. We have to listen to the airmen that we supervise. We have to listen to our coworkers, so that we can kind of learn, what makes them tick, who they are as individual human beings. I think part of our relationship is that I understand who you are as a human being, and although we kind of have joked, for years about I don't speak on behalf of all white people, or I don't speak on behalf of all black people. I mean, the reality is that you're a human being to me, and so we've kind of worked our way past that idea. But I think a lot of people that are uncomfortable with these conversations, they don't know where to begin. Okay, so I got it. The AFSOC commander says, I need to listen, learn, and lead. So, all right, Myron. Yeah, how do you begin the conversation? How do you begin that conversation in a way that, I could imagine that it might sound, I don't know, like I'm putting some kind of stereotype or something on you. If I were to come up to you and say, "Hey, Myron, how you doing in the aftermath of George Floyd and the, protests and that kind of stuff? How you doing?" I could imagine you might feel like, "Hey, are you asking that because you care about me or because of the color of my skin?" And so I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't ask him. So, how do you begin these conversations?
So we didn't start start talking or meet. When we met, you didn't ask me about this. This just came through everyday conversation and getting to understand each other and to trust one another. And eventually, we went deeper. But as leaders in the Air Force, when we see a troubled airman, or if we see somebody that's acting differently for any reason, we expect all of us to stop and ask how they're doing. And if you see someone that might be down or posting on social media something that's a little bit different, as an airman, we should ask another airman how they're doing. And this, I don't see this being much different than any other situation when we see airmen struggling with something. If we see their performance changing, if we see their posting being different, if we see their just their demeanor in general. And there's a high likelihood that most of your black airmen feel some kind of way about it. And if they directly don't, someone in their family does. And I think it's definitely appropriate to ask the question. And then it's how it's received too. Like, hey, all black people are upset. How you? What do you think? That's probably not the way to do it. So sometimes it's not just how it's received, but how it's said. And so I think just taking a leap of faith. If you care about your airmen, you go and you ask, and they react and get defensive, then understand they're taking it heavy. It's hard for them right now. And don't take that personal, just like we wouldn't with anything else. Don't take it personal that there is a negative reaction to your good purposed question. And we just move on or reattack the next day. And that's really all I have on how we start these conversations.
Yeah, I've heard from a number of airmen that have been troubled that their leadership is disengaged, or their leadership hasn't checked on them, or their leadership hasn't, asked them, are you doing okay in light of everything that's going on in America right now, and that kind of stuff. And that's been surprising to me. I might be inclined to think that, there's a lot of people that just have a blind spot here. It wouldn't even occur to me to check on you. You're not from Minneapolis. You're from, San Bernardino. Why do you care what's going on in Minneapolis or Atlanta or what? it just wouldn't occur to me because we're not, you and I work together every day, everything's fine. I mean, why would you be upset by what's going on in Minneapolis? I think that's a blind spot that maybe some people have.
Well, so I have to answer a question with a question. You were one of the first senior leaders to post or talk about this once the George Floyd situation occurred. And there is something in you, there's a reason why you did that. And so my question to you is why? And then I think I can answer your question. Why is it that you felt the need to get out in front of the rest of the Air Force and talk about this topic?
Well, I don't know that, well, I do know that I did not. I know that I did not sit and think, wow, what a great opportunity to get out in front of the rest of the Air Force. I mean, I was without, I was without reference to what anybody else was doing. It was a burden on me that I felt, and I literally got up one morning, went for a run, was thinking about it, came back from running, sat down on my computer, hammered out this, Facebook post, hit the send button. I mean, I didn't ask my PA to look at it. I didn't sit on it for 12 hours and come back and edit it. I mean, it was on my mind. It was feeling like, there's something to be said here, and I have a platform. I think I'm expected to use it. And so I sat down and hammered it out and hit the send button. So, I mean, I didn't do it with reference to what anybody else was doing or what the reception would be or whatever. It was on my heart.
But you're not from Minneapolis. You're not black. This guy wasn't even in the Air Force, right? But you felt it. You saw the scenario, you're seeing the reaction, and you felt like something had to be said. I don't think that it has to be a black airman that's upset because a black man had a knee across his neck, all right? I don't think you have to be a black person from Minneapolis to feel some kind of way when you see something like that in real time, more or less, over and over and over again. So for me, it isn't about being from Minneapolis or that this is the second time something like this has happened in that city. It isn't just about that it was an unarmed black man. It isn't just about that it was a black man. It's about the visceral reaction that seeing a man die on video. And then it just so happens that I've seen black men die on video many times over. And that is why I get sad and I get frustrated and I have built up anger when I see these things occur. And yes, if I would have saw a white man die on the street with a knee on his neck, I would have been upset. So that is why I am frustrated. It's about morals, morality, and just it just didn't look good. But then all the other things that are just so common to my experiences of my friends, there's an eruption of all the things that were built up inside. You just get tired, tired of seeing it.
What is that? That's something that I have. That's a phrase that I have heard a lot of black airmen say or write over the last. Every time something like this happens, there's a bunch of people that will say, "Man, I'm just so tired. I'm tired of being tired." What is it that is? What's the tiring part?
So that second tired could be anything, right? I'm tired of having to explain why I feel like I'm being treated differently when I'm black. I'm tired of having video cameras in my car when I'm driving down the street. I'm tired of seeing black men get killed on video. I'm tired of seeing black people get killed unarmed. I'm tired of seeing people be killed unarmed. I'm tired of carrying my military ID around just to to let people know that I'm more than just a black man, and that you shouldn't be scared of me. You know, I'm tired of reading on social media people saying, hey, you know, slavery was 400 years ago, as if there aren't systematic injustices still. I'm tired of people not listening. You know, so tired of being tired. It's just everything that's built up. And I want to be tired like you're tired, because I've worked for 14 hours and go to sleep. But I don't want to be tired because I've worked 14 hours and then when I ran off base, someone called me the N-word, or, you know, someone stopped me and frisked me because, you know, I look differently, or a lady grabs her purse because I walk by, you know, like, I just want to be tired because I didn't get sleep, or I've worked hard.
Yeah, these are the kinds of things that I think if our airmen aren't talking to one another, these things don't get said. And so I appreciate you saying them here today for me, and really for whoever our audience turns out being. It may be, you know,
my family and your.
Yeah, my family, your family, and the people in our PA shop. But I appreciate you. I appreciate you illuminating some of that for us, Myron. This is these are the conversations that people ought to be having and probably haven't had.
And without the cameras and everything, like, this is like a therapy thing. Like, getting some of this off my chest just talking to you. It's interesting that cameras are rolling, but when we have these conversations, it's an opportunity for me to get some things off my chest, and then not just get them off my chest, but then hear your perspective, and I appreciate you sharing yours as well.
All right. Well, I think we've got just a few more things to talk about, so we'll pick up the conversation next time on AFSOC Unfiltered. Thanks.